his riches in glory. 5 things. 5 things. Write these down. Say 5 things. How to prosper in hard times. She goes to Elijah. She says, hey, I need some help. The first thing Elijah says to her, well, how can I help you? Elijah says the first thing that you must do in order to prosper in hard times is you got to look at what you have in your house. Yeah, I only got one clap. The first thing you got to do, watch this, is look at what you have in the house. That's what she says. She says, I don't have nothing but a little bit of oil. Now, you know, but is a conjunction, which means that everything in front of the but is happening equally as everything behind the but. So there's a strange cocktail because you're saying you don't have nothing when you got something anyway. And some of us have but situations where we think we may not have much, but I've come to let you know today that the little bit that you have is more than a lot that God can bless others with. Use your little bit and God will make it a whole lot. Look at what you have in the house. Watch this. Don't say what you don't have. First principle of stewardship. God owns everything. The earth is the Lord's, the fullness thereof, and they that dwells therein. So God even owns the flour you got. He owns the cornmeal and the buttermilk that you got. He owns the bologna, He owns the caviar that you have. God owns everything. And so she says, I have nothing but a jar of oil. That's all I got. That's all I have. I don't have nothing else. I don't have a full spread. But I only have this little bit. I have this oil. I have this oil that's been sitting here, and this oil that I have, Elijah, it's not enough. Well, Elijah says to her, I'm not going to tell you, but I'm going to show you that what you have is more than enough for God. Is there anybody here can testify and say, my little bit that I thought I did not have enough for, that when God blessed it, God made my little bit a whole lot? Look at what you have in the house. Can I talk to you for a minute, congregation? Let me talk to you. Grace, let me bring it home. You got everything you need. Talk book. You got everything you need in this season to make God's blessing happen. Look, one person clapping. No, don't clap, because I'm going to give you this third one and you're going to wish you would have. But watch this. Watch this. Life and death lies in what you say, in the power of the tongue. So what you say you may not have, you are condemning what you do have. And I believe what Elijah is doing is trying to tell the lady, listen, don't look at your little bit, but understand that there's a Lord who gave you the little bit that you have. And when you give it to the Lord will do exceedingly abundantly above more than you can ever ask. God can take a little bit and turn it into a whole lot. Is there a witness here this morning can testify and say, he's taken my little bit? Look at what you have in the house. Look at what you have in the house. Number 2, I got to hurry up. Number 2. Never be afraid to ask your neighbor for some help. Never be afraid to ask your neighbor for what you need. Here's what Elijah tells her. He said, go and ask your neighbor. tell them that you need a few jars. Now I can see the look on the woman's face. Wait a minute. The temple took care of me. I don't do that. I can see the look on her face. I can see that she had a pride issue. But sometimes that you can't get to your blessing until you get over your prideful issues. Listen, Elijah said, if you don't get over your pride issues, your problem will still exist. And when you give in to your problem, you're still going to have the same pain that you're dealing with. And so he says, come off of your pride, go and tell your neighbors what you need. Grace, some of the stuff that we need is already around here. It's sitting in here, and watch this, it's even sitting out there. But we got to move away from the pride issue. We used to say down south, a closed mouth don't get fed. If you don't say you need anything, nobody will know what you need. But I'm glad that I opened my mouth. And when I'm in need for something, not only will I ask God, I'm going to ask you too. Because you are an instrument of blessing around us. You have to understand, ask your neighbors for what you need. That's called fellowship. So first of all, you have to remember that you need to look at what you have in the house. Number two, ask your neighbors for what you need. But look at what she does on number three. Elijah tells her, when you get the jars, go into your house and shut the door behind you and then begin the pouring. Watch this. In order for God to do God's work, sometimes you have to shut off the outside so God can show up on the inside. You don't hear me this morning. Isn't it something, Sister Green, that everybody else can tell you what's going on in the church and they don't even come to church? You know, everybody can tell you what you should be doing. Everybody trying to tell us what we should be doing, and ain't none of them come up in here to see what we're doing. But I dare you to trust God. I dare you to look at what God is doing in your life. Sometimes you got to shut off the outside so God can show up on the inside. The church has become paralyzed because we are afraid of a little persecution. But you got to shut those voices off that speak about injustices. Watch this now. It does not matter who's sitting in the highest seat of the land. There is a seat that's much more. It does not matter how many millions of dollars they have. There is somebody who owns everything. There is somebody who owns the money maker and the coin shaker. There is somebody who owns everything, who sits high and looks low. You have to shut off the outside so God can show up on the inside. Here's the fourth thing. Text says that she told her boy, say, listen, bring me one of them other jars from over there. And when he looked around, he didn't see anymore, and immediately the Bible says that the oil stopped. Now this is a miracle, because how can you tip over a little bit and have a pouring circumstance? And pouring means that it had the context of something that was flowing that never stopped. But when she found out that she did not have any more jars to put it in, immediately the oil stopped. Some of us would have ran out the room. It was no faucet on the flask. There was no faucet. There was no on and off button. So question is, Pastor, what's going on here? Sometimes God, there comes a time when the pouring must stop and the praising must begin. See, God had continued to pour out the oil, and then it came a point where the pouring had to stop. Can I talk to you for a minute, Grace? There are folk who have been poured into for many years. God is waiting on you to give him praise, because he's not going to pour anything else in you if you are not willing to give him the praise for what he has already established in you. The pouring has to stop sometime. Lord, do this for me. Lord, do that for me. And God is saying, what have you done with what I've already given you? Woo! God has to cut the pouring and to see if you'll give him praise. Well, always look at what you have in the house. Never be afraid to ask your neighbor for what you need. Shut off the outside so God can show up on the inside. There's a time when pouring must stop and praising must begin. But look at verse 7. Look at that last verse. Look at, God changes the whole situation. Verse 7 says, then she came and told the man of God and said, go sell the oil and pay for your debt, and you and your sons live off the rest. I lost my mind when I read that. Here's why. Here's why. Notice that she started out as a person with a problem, but now she ends up as a person who's prosperous. She had to do some work in order to see some other work done. God was not just going to put the blessing in her lap and she laughed about it, but she had to do something in order to be blessed by something. Here's the last thing I want to share with you, and I'm up out of here. When you change your position, it makes for a better condition. When you change your position, it makes for a better condition. When you change your position, it makes for a better condition. When you change your position, it makes for a better condition. When you change your position, it makes for better condition. When you change your position, it makes for better condition. When you change your position, it makes for better condition. Stop clapping. Wait a minute, because I want you to understand this before you leave. That means you can't stay in the place you used to be in because all you're dealing with a problem. But when you change your position, you can change your condition. Somebody in here ought to give God praise because you changed your position. As I close, over 2,000 years ago, a man had to change his position. He was first positioned on Calvary's Mount, and he had to stay there for 3 long days. But in order for him to change the condition of humanity, he had to change his position. And so the Bible says that he died on the old rugged cross. They moved him from the position of being crucified and laid him in a borrowed tomb. Have you ever asked yourself the question, why was the tomb borrowed? The fact of the matter is, he would not need it long. And so he changed his position, laid out as a seed planted in the ground. But early Sunday morning, he changed his position that changed all of our condition. And so how can you prosper? How can you prosper in hard times? How can you prosper in hard times? You got to change your position. You're not here where you used to be. I looked in the mirror, I'm not as cut as I'm used to be. I'm swole. I'm swole. I'm swole. You got to change your position. Grace, is there anybody here who recognize that they had to make some changes in their life in order to move forward? Tell somebody you can prosper in hard times. You got to look at what you have in the house. You got to ask your neighbors for what you need. You got to shut off the outside in order for God to show up on the inside. But most of all, tell him you got to change your position in order to get a better condition. So somebody may be in a condition or the position of sin. You may need to change that position for a better condition.